abs.
Training abs.
Core muscles.
Get abs, man.
The most complicated muscle group to train, according to the fitness experts of TikTok. Waist trainers, ridiculous exercises, and crazy ab circuits that burn belly fat while toning your abs. These videos get millions of views and leave millions of people wondering where those promised abs are hiding. It's so much more straightforward than you may think, and that's why in this video we're going to slaughter the worst ab training advice and teach you how to actually train your abs effectively. So if you're tired of these trending workout plans, smash the like button because this one's for you.
So the big issue I take with this movement here is you have to question why you're doing a movement. What is the purpose? Holding that kind of semi-crunch V-sit position is obviously going to involve some abdominal engagement, sure, to hold that position. But firstly, it's not taking them through a relevant range of motion against resistance. There's a couple of big misconceptions here. People really forget and neglect to realize that the abs are just like any other muscle and you should train them accordingly. When looking at developing any muscle, what you do is identify its purpose or its function and train it through that function. So you work out what the abdominal region wants to do, primarily spinal flexion, so basically reducing the distance between the sternum and the pelvis, crunching basically, training that function against resistance, like you would looking at bench pressing for your chest, squatting for your legs, whatever it may be. So firstly, we do that. Second thing, holding these isometric positions does yield a lot of burning, a lot of sensation, but just because you're hurting it doesn't necessarily mean you're working it effectively. And one of the most effective ways to develop your muscles is to take those muscles through the given range of motion against resistance and progressively overload over time, and obviously train to a sufficient intensity. So everyone has this idea that training your abs is going to make them big, blocky, whatever it may be. That's not the case. When you want to hold more abdominal definition or more defined or visible abs at slightly higher body fat percentage, having more developed abs helps you with that. Training your abs heavy, hard against resistance isn't going to give you a magically thicker waist or anything like that. That's largely going to be genetics. If you train your abs well, effectively, with good movements and train them hard and get leaner, you're probably going to look bloody sick. Second to that is the dumbbell. She's passing the dumbbell through her legs as she was doing. And again, you question why. What does your abdominal region really have to do to pass the dumbbell through the legs? Holding the resistance, I get it. You're holding a position against additional resistance. Although not as good as just taking a movement through a relevant range of motion, I get the idea there. But the passing of the dumbbell, your abs aren't moving the dumbbell. What's moving your dumbbell is going to be your shoulders primarily because you are taking it through like that. Again, very irrelevant when looking at abdominal development. If you really want to choose a good ab movement, I'd simplify it by doing a crunch variation. A weighted crunch on the floor is a better alternative to this. But if you want to take it one step further and do an even better alternative, I'd consider a rope crunch variation instead. I don't like it. Mountain climbers, a movement I see in nearly every ab circuit, but again, you have to question why. So if you actually look at what's happening when doing a mountain climber, you'll bring your legs or knees up to your chest while holding a plank position. Your abdominal region is far less involved in that than you might think. So holding that plank position, you're obviously going to get some abdominal recruitment from holding the kind of straight torso. I get it, but far less than you think. Second thing is your arms, chest, and whatever are going to be holding that extended position. Cool, whatever. There's a fatiguing issue there where they might fatigue first. We don't like that. The second thing is the actual bringing of the knees up to the chest, again, involves less of the abs than you might think because the respective distance between the sternum and the pelvis isn't actually really changing. You're bringing the legs up, but the pelvis is staying here and the sternum is staying there, not including any spinal flexion, not focusing or targeting one of the primary functions of the abdominal region. When I say the abdominal region, I'm thinking more about the six-pack muscles. So there are obviously many muscles around that region, but what I mean by that is the typical six-pack muscles. What's typically actually doing that far more than you might realize is going to be the hip flexors. So a muscle that runs from that kind of lower abdominal region down into the legs. Again, not targeting the six-pack muscles effectively. The other thing you have to consider is how do you progressively overload that movement? You can't really add weight to it, and there's only so many reps you can do without realizing you're not getting sufficient stimulus for developmental progress. So what I would then do instead is, if you're looking at developing your six-pack muscles, in this case, spinal flexion, reducing the distance from here to here. You can do that through a crunch variation or a reverse crunch variation. There's a fly somewhere. It doesn't matter. Just do one of those, lift heavier, train harder, do it 2 or 3 times a week. You'll probably be okay. Training your abs effectively essentially goes against everything you're ever taught. When you're doing any movement, they always say keep a flat back, blah, 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 blah. Cool, fantastic, I respect it, neutral spine, all that good stuff. When you're training your abs effectively, do the opposite. We don't want a neutral spine, we do not want a flat back. I want you to bend the spine as much as possible, round it, hunch over, reduce that distance as much as possible, thus shorten the abs as much as possible. That's a yay. Flat back, neutral spine is a nay. If you made it this far in the video, don't forget to like, share, and comment on the video, because although you may not think it makes a difference? Let's try that again. If you made it this far in the video, I'd appreciate it if you not only like the video, but also subscribe to the channel. Although you may not think it makes a difference, it really does, because it tells YouTube I'm actually worth promoting. It also makes me feel like somebody actually cares about me, and my therapist can stop hearing about me complaining about feeling unloved every week.
Okay.
Got to behave yourself. Again, what we're seeing here is very much a hip flexor dominant movement. When you're holding this kind of scissor kick pattern where you're doing this and the crissy-crossy and the up and downs and whatnot, a lot of that movement is going to be occurring from the hip flexors. Do you really want to work your hip flexors this much? Probably not. Got an itchy head, better scratch that. Again, all of these movements and all these workouts are targeted as ab workouts. Again, when we say abs, we look at the six-pack muscles, but the hip flexors aren't part of that consideration, especially in the context that we're talking about. So why would you choose over and over again hip flexor dominant movements? And this video gets really repetitive because it is. You are looking at spinal flexion when working the abs effectively. Whether you do that with a crunch variation, a leg raise variation, whatever, that's completely up to you. But you do not need to do these kind of scissor kick bits and bobs and whatnot to target your abs effectively, because all you're going to do is you're probably going to develop a lot of lactic acid buildup in the region, but you're just going to fatigue your hip flexors massively. And again, like with any other muscle, what you want to do to actually progress and develop it is train it within close proximity of failure, ideally with more weight or more reps each time. It's really hard to progressively overload these movements. Therefore, your ceiling of progression is going to be very low and very limited. And although, yes, it goes against everything you've been taught and all of what you've been seeing online for years and years and years, trust me, you can really simplify ab movements to crunch variations. Honestly, if I were to choose 2 ab movements and just do those for the rest of my training career, I do a rope crunch or decline crunch, your choice, but I say rope crunch, and a back supported knee raise variation. Because again, I'm doing a movement that brings the sternum closer to the pelvis and a movement that brings the pelvis closer to the sternum. That's it. 2 or 3 sets of both, split across a week, so 4 to 6 sets total against resistance, progressively doing more and more each week for a long time. Pair that with getting leaner, you're probably going to be okay. Yes, people jump in and say, well, what about your obliques? I don't think a lot of people need to train their obliques. When you develop the typical oblique muscles that we're thinking about being this kind of V taper here, that's all well and good, but what that can sadly lead to is the illusion and appearance of a thicker waist. Do you want said illusion? Probably not. Does it look pretty cool? Yes, it does, but a lot of people do not want to potentially risk that illusion of a slightly thicker waist, so they just don't train their obliques entirely. And for that case, I don't blame them. One of the big issues on social media, this is a very common issue, is that people will automatically look at somebody who is in great shape or has a fantastic physique or a physique they may want to achieve in some capacity and automatically assume that they know what they're talking about, when in many cases they sadly do not. You'll look at this individual here and say, obviously he's clearly achieved his physique doing these workouts on this circuit, whatever it may be, but in reality I think people are overlooking the important role that genetics plays here. Whether he does this or an even better movement, whatever it may be, he's still probably going to look bloody fantastic because genetically he's doing okay. Sure, I've no doubt he works very hard, very consistent, all of that good stuff, but genetics are playing a massive role here. There's also the consideration of other supplementation, such as PEDs, performance enhancing drugs, but that is another story for another day. Just because somebody looks good doesn't mean they maybe couldn't look better if they train slightly better. People look at these individuals that have incredible physiques, say, oh, that's the best they could ever be, and that's because they do these workouts. But what if they did better workouts? Could they not be even better? Probably could. And I think obviously throughout this video, we've very much spoken about the idea of abdominal training and development through the context of hypertrophy, being obviously building your abs so they look better, thicker, whatever it may be. The other way to look at it, what about your back health? The abs obviously play many roles and have served many functions. We're looking at it from the developmental perspective, but there is also the consideration of the perspective of actually injury prevention and back health, in which case you can include other movements that aren't necessarily going to be great for developing the abdominal region for an aesthetics purpose, but more, like I said, an injury prevention or maybe core stability or strength purpose. So you have variations like plank variations, fantastic, anti-rotational variations such as the Pallof press, or things like the dead bugs, which again I found particularly helpful when I had back issues implementing dead bugs after some of my workouts. These are all fantastic movements that don't take the abs through their intended range of motion against resistance, but like I said, they serve another purpose, which is injury prevention and potentially even longevity from building a stronger, more robust core region, focusing on not just spinal flexion, anti-rotation, and also isometric holds, all of that good stuff. So again, it doesn't just need to be aesthetic driven. You can train your abdominal region or core region for different purposes. It really depends what your goals are. Again, like all my videos, this is simply my opinion. Just because I'm saying something doesn't necessarily mean it's true or that you should do it. It's just simply promoting and providing information that has helped me achieve things I wanted to achieve, help my clients achieve many good things, and also will hopefully, I believe, help you achieve things too. The world online is full of so much misinformation and conflicting information, it's quite easy to get lost and very confused. If you don't believe me, I dare you to try it properly for a long enough period of time, consistently, and I can guarantee you're going to be pleased. Thank you for tolerating me. Thank you for tolerating my waffle about the abs and my belly, and thank you for tolerating the video. tfnl coach is always linked down below in the description, maybe even in the comment section too, so if you fancy filling in the application form, which takes about 30 seconds, do so. I'll send you an email regarding hopping on a free Zoom consultation call with me. We can have a chat, waffle about abs, waffle about bellies, and sit in ties together, and then you can decide whether tfnl coach is something you wish to pursue. As always, comment section and description.